So today we're going to be tying a pattern that I was kind of working on yesterday. Something at least new for me. I don't know if it exists elsewhere. So I'll give it a name, and I'm going to call it the Ginger May. Felt like that was an appropriate name, and we are going to brave the TroutFly world here. I've got a size 14 TroutFly hook, barbless in the vise, and a lot of the material that we'll be tying with today is obviously going to be ginger. I'm just going to use light colored 18-aught nano silk. I'm going to start just by throwing in some tails, and for tails I'm just going to use we're going to use maybe 4 or 5 micro fibbets, making sure that they're nice and lined up. I'm going to just use these micros today and on this pattern, so we got those cut off and lined up. Give that a couple of wraps just to make sure we've got the length about where we want it. It's maybe a little bit too long, but let's see here. Just draw some of those fibers forward a little bit, and that's going to get me where I want to be. I don't want to create a lot of bulk up front. We're going to put a wing on the fly in addition to the hackle, so I don't want to put too much material going up near the eye. And then just clip out the balance of our micro fibbets here. From there, I'm just going to hold them kind of upright just to help me make sure I keep them on the top of the shank of the hook here as I tie backwards, get them locked into place. And then I'll just go ahead and take one wrap, kind of a loose wrap underneath of it, like that, pull it forward, and that will just help splay those tails out a little bit. I'm going to tie in a wing here, and for the wing I'm going to use some mallard flank that I've already stripped the fluffy parts off of this. And so what you're going to want to do with this is kind of get it this way. I just basically hold onto the tip and then I stroke some of the fibers back on either side. I do want, in this case, it to be very even on either side in terms of the number of fibers. I'm actually going to stick this in my mouth here. It's like that. Just helps me get a point on it. And then I take a nozzle that I use that comes with my UV resin, that obviously I don't use for my UV resin. And I'm going to go ahead and push that feather in, and you can see it starting to come out the other side. As it comes out, you'll see right where I had made that split, right there. And the balance is going to become the wings on this fly. So I'm going to actually take that just a little bit further. I'm going to leave this in the nozzle while I tie this onto the top of the shank of the hook here. There's a lot of, you'll see, actually you won't see because I'll probably cut this before I get too far. So I've got the balance of the feather now in the nozzle here, and I'm just going to sneak in here with my scissors, and we're going to kind of cut this off really short. And go ahead and throw away that excess. You can see that this wing is just kind of moving around, which is fine. We're going to tighten that up a little bit here with a few thread wraps. And we're going to have a quill body on this. So it will be tapered a little bit, but I don't want a lot of bulk. From here, I'm going to stand this up, and this is what this is looking like. If you can see that Hopefully you can. Let's see if I can focus in here a little bit better on that. So once I've got it to this point, I'm just going to use my thumb, kind of push that up and backwards, creating a little bit of a crease in here. Then I'm going to do some kind of jam wraps in front of that, and that will just help that stand up a little bit for us, and that's what we're looking for it to do. So I've got that about where I want it, and you'll see as we tie this, I'll be moving this back and forth a bit, and then I'll just go ahead and start working my way back down the shank of the hook here. And our goal here is to create some taper. And I'm just going to go ahead and throw this upside down and get this little guy out of here, because it'll just bother me if I don't. I'll turn my vise back around. And so at this point I'm just going to use some hand stripped. These are hand stripped Polish quills, and I'm using ginger for the color. Once I get that quill out of the packaging here, you can see this is kind of what it looks like. It's a little dark on the bottom side and it's lighter on the top side. On this end you can see kind of the balance. This is made out of a peacock herl. And I take it out now because I'm going to put it in my mouth just to soften it up a little bit, so it's not quite as brittle. And then from there I'm just going to work on getting a taper, and then we'll tie this material in. So now that we've kind of got our taper, hopefully our quill is softened up a little bit. And go ahead and tie this quill in. And usually when I tie my quills in like this, I want to give myself plenty of thread, because as I move backwards here, and I will kind of turn my vise to look at the profile, but I don't want to crank down on this quill, especially at the bend of the hook here where we're going to start, because the material is rather delicate and very easy to break, and your thread, if you're cranking down on it really hard, will end up just breaking that quill as you try to move it up your hook shank. From there I'm going to just turn my hook a little bit sideways here. Again, I don't want a lot of bulk up here either. So I'll cut off the balance of that material. So we're going to be really careful here around the point of the hook. And that is probably deeper than it needs to be, but I'm going to keep my tension on, not so tight that it's going to break off, but if I let go of it, then it's just going to unwind, and I'll just do it all over again. I'll tighten up my thread a little bit with my one hand. I'm going to take my first couple of wraps over the top of that quill to lock it in place. And because we are using nano silk, there is some forgiveness here in terms of bulk. It doesn't add a lot of bulk at all, and that's one of the advantages. From there I can release this from my hackle plier. I'll set that aside. Let's come in with our scissors. Cut the balance off there, and this little strand of something, probably nano silk. So we've got our fly kind of to this point. From here we're going to put in a hackle feather, and I've already sized it for size 14, and I'm using a barred ginger. Again, that's why I'm calling this the Ginger May. So we're going to tie this hackle in to the side of the hook here, and I want the stem right about where I want to start taking turns with the hackle, and then I'm just going to take some wraps forward behind that wing And then I'm probably going to take a wrap or two in front of that wing as well. And once I get that far, I'm going to come in with my scissors and make sure I get this cut so that it's not hanging out over the eye of the hook. And I did not leave myself a lot of space towards the eye, but that's okay. We'll still make this work. And then we're going to come back down. So from here, what we're going to do is this handle that we've created here on the top, we'll just gingerly, gosh, I guess that there are lots of reasons I'm going to call this the ginger May. Grab hold of those fibers on the top and start to pull them apart. And what they should do is split right down the middle. Like that. And so now you have a couple of wings that are really, I really like the way those wings end up looking. I'm going to leave these top parts on. I'll trim them off a little bit later. So I'm going to use some Superfine dubbing here in a light Cahill, just because I just wanted a lighter color here. This will just, help as we're wrapping the hackle up, and it also covers up those thread wraps, the stems, all the other stuff that's going on there. So I'm going to, and I love the Superfine, especially for this, because I want this to be just really nice and tight and not overly puffy. It's going to be a little puffy, but I don't want it overly puffy. And I'll just tighten that up as I move up behind these wings here. Make sure I get a good wrap behind those wings. Then I'm going to kind of pull those wings up backwards a little bit, get ourselves a wrap or two of this dubbing in front of those wings. So now that I've got my thread on the bobbin cradle, I'm going to come back with my hackle pliers. We're going to get a hold of the end of this hackle here. We're going to stand that straight up. And where I can, I'm going to use my kind of fingernails and kind of create a crease right here, bending this feather towards the front a little bit. We'll still have some errant fibers to clean up, but so we'll just start touching wraps, moving up behind the wing here. And as we get kind of up closer like this, I'll switch hands a little bit and just go ahead and pull those a little bit forwards, just so they don't get kind of caught up in these wraps that are going to be right up against the wing. Just like that. And from here, similarly, I'm going to now pull those wings backwards to make sure I get a wrap or two in front of those wings. So I'm going to take just a couple wraps here. Again, I didn't leave myself a tremendous amount of space here. We'll take a couple of wraps here to secure the stem of that hackle feather up against the shaft of the hook here. So I'll take 2 or 3 wraps. Again, it's nano silk, so it's not leaving a lot of bulk. Then I'll take a turn or two in front as well. Then I can let that go for my hackle plier. Now, one of the things that I like to do a little bit more when I'm especially tying a dry pattern like this that's got a hackle on it is to turn to one of my ancient bodkins that has a hole on the opposite end, and I can just wrap my thread around that, and I can stick the eye of the hook through. So you can see I've got the hole there. Just taking my thread, I'm going to sit this on my thread, wrap my thread around it, start pulling tight. I'm going to take that empty end, slide it over the eye of the hook, and then it'll just slide off. So a couple of things I like about this. One is it's easy. And 2 is it can help you push some of those errant fibers back, so you don't trap as many fibers as you might trap if you were using a just a whip finisher. So I've got enough wraps in there that's not going to go anywhere. And from here, it's just a matter of we're going to go ahead and get our thread cut off. Like that. We'll grab our scissors. We want to cut this hackle off, and I do want to clip this off very, very close to where the shaft is meeting the shank of the hook. So I've got that taken care of as well. While I still have my handles on my wings here, I can now kind of adjust those wings and make sure I've got them about where I want them. So once we've got those wings kind of where we want, this is where I'll come in with my scissors and be really careful, but just cut those tip ends off on either side. And if you do that, that's fine. You can just come right along and trim that. Where I clipped it a little bit too close, but now you're starting to see the pattern. So there you have it, the Ginger May. Again, it's just a Mayfly pattern, using a ginger hackle and using a ginger quill for the body. And then we use the kind of a bronze, which is kind of a ginger looking mallard flank there.